ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। So, these are our lectures on Drg Drashya Viveka. Our journey into the Viveka, the separation of Drashta and Drashya, the seer and the seen, is going on. At present, we are on verse number 5. So far, we have seen that objects of the world are Drashya and the eyes, Lochanam Drg. Eyes are the Drashta. Then eyes are seen by the mind. Mind is seen by Chitihi. So objects are seen by the eyes. Eyes are seen by the mind. Mind is seen by Chitihi or consciousness. Now the question is, who is seeing the Chitihi or consciousness? So this is the question. Who sees the consciousness? To reply this, because so far those who were Drashta, the eyes were the Drashta of the objects, then the mind was the Drashta of the eyes, and then consciousness is the Drashta of the mind. So now the question comes, who sees this consciousness? Does this consciousness also become an object for some other entity? No, because here the text stops, because the reality is that the author says that Chitihi drugeva natu drushyate. Chiti is ever consciousness, it is ever drashta and is never seen by anything, which means it never becomes drushya. It never becomes an object of seeing, object of knowledge by anything. So then, to illustrate the nature of this drashta called Chitihi, the verse number 5 said, we will read this verse once again. Nodeti nastyametyesha na vruddhim yati nakshayam swayam vibhatyatanyani bhasayet sadhanam vina. This verse number 5 talks about Chitihi, which means consciousness. I told you last time that this Chitihi is a feminine word. So it means consciousness or Atma or what shall we say? The self, the reality. So about this, the verse very beautifully describes or unfolds its nature. It says this Chitihi. How is that? So it says na udeti na astametyesha na astameti esha means this Chitihi this Chitihi was referred in verse number 4. So here the author uses the pronoun Esha for this Chitihi. This Chiti doesn't rise, that means it has no birth. Na astametyesha, na astameti, which means it doesn't decline, it has no end. Na vruddhim yati, na kshayam, it doesn't grow. Vruddhi means growth, it doesn't grow, nor does it decline. Na kshayam yati. Then what is its nature? Swayam vibhati, it is self-shining. But then, because it is self-shining, atha anyani bhasayet sadhanam vina. Not only is it self-shining, but it illumines others without acquiring or without getting help of anything else, without aid of anything. It illumines others too. Who are these others? The rest of the world, beginning from mind. See, from the Chitihi, from the light of the Chiti, the mind shines. Listen this very well. The light of the Chiti, because of the consciousness of this Chiti, because of this consciousness, because of the shining of the consciousness, the mind shines. The mind shines because of consciousness. Then, because of the mind shining, the eyes, that is sense organs, shine. Because the sense organs are shining, then the rest of the objects of the world, which means the objects of the world, which means the entire world, shines because the sense organs are shining. But where do we go for the first light? It is because of the shining of the consciousness that the mind shines. Then because of the mind, the sense organs shine, and then because of the sense organs, the entire creation shines. So you understand that. And how does this self-consciousness shine? So the author made it very clear. Swayam vibhati. It is self-shining. It shines on its own. Do not look for the light, any other light exterior to this consciousness for it to shine. There is no other entity, no other self-shining entity which illumines this consciousness. No. It is Swayam Vibhati, Swayam Jyotihi. It shines on its own and illumines other things. Which are these other things? Everything beginning from mind. So, we saw earlier that there are only these two entities. How many entities are there? Drashta and Drashya. Seer and the seen. Only these two entities are there. Now, who is this Drashta? It is Drashta who sees the Drashya. So, we saw that objects are Drashya and sense organs, that is eyes, are Drashta. Eyes are the seer who sees the objects of the world. Then again these eyes are seen. And who is the Drashta? Mind is the Drashta. Again the mind is the seer of the eyes, all right. But the mind itself is seen. Drishyaha dhivruttayaha. Mind is, the modes of the mind are also seen. And who is the Drashta? Chitihi, or consciousness. So the ultimate Drashta is consciousness, and rest of the things beginning from mind to the sense organs to objects, and objects represent the entire creation. So there is only one Drashta. If we analyze, the final Drashta is consciousness. From the borrowed light of the consciousness, the mind shines, then the eyes shine, and then the rest of the creation shines. So, the ultimate Drashta is this Chiti, and rest everything falls in the category of Drashya. So, there are only these two things, Drashta and Drashya. Who is Drashta? Consciousness. And rest of the thing, the question is, now the moot question, and the author said very well, unfolded the nature of this consciousness. How is it? The author said that it is free from birth and death, which means birth means it doesn't have prior non-existence. All this we saw last time. It doesn't have prior non-existence, which means it doesn't. It is not that it was not there before birth. Everything else in the creation has birth. There is a time when it comes, and there was a time when it was not. So birth shows that it is there now. Yes, the pot, let us say pot is there. Pot was not there at a certain time. Before its creation, pot was not. So that is called prag abhava, prior non-existence. So birth marks prior non-existence. Birth, okay, but birth shows that it was not at a certain time. Then death. Death shows that it will not be after a certain time. When the pot is broken, that means pot is destroyed. Pot is no more existent in its form. So it is no more there. Birth or a death shows that it is not in the same form after a certain time. That means this thing is called posterior non-existence. So everything in this creation has these two things. Prag abhava, that is prior non-existence, and posterior non-existence. Chitihi, the author says, based on the scriptures, na udeti na astameti, which means it is not that it was not there at a certain time, and it doesn't mean, and it also doesn't mean that it will not be after a certain time, which means it doesn't have birth and death. It always is. And by saying that it doesn't have birth and death, the rest of the vikaras, the rest of the changes, parinama, are also negated. So there are the shad bhava vikara. There are the 6 kinds of changes pertaining to anything. And which are they? Jayate, asti, vardate, viparinamate, apakshiyate, vinashyati. These are the 6 things into which everything falls. Each and every object in this creation has birth, and then it grows, and then it begins to decline, and a time comes when it is not there. So what is all this? 6. Asti, jayate, vardate, viparinamate, apakshiyate, vinashyati. Asti, it is born. It grows, vardate. Asti, jayate, vardate, viparinamate. It goes through changes. Apakshiyate, begins to decline. And then a time comes when it is vinashyati, it is no more there. So by denying birth and death, the author has already denied what? The rest of the vikaras also. So it is shad bhava vikara rahitaha, which means that this chitihi or consciousness is not only self-shining, but it is also not subject to any kind of change. It always is, remains the same forever, which means from this we can derive what? That it is what? It is beyond any kind of change, not time bound. Not a single thing in this creation is free from the limitations and changes which time brings, which space brings. Everything is limited by time, limited by space, limited by objectivity. A thing is only this and not that. None of these limitations, but here mainly limitation of time is talked about. Time bound. Things are time bound, whereas Chitihi is not time bound, which means it ever is. Plus, how is it? It is. But how do you know that it is? Because it is, yes, existent, yes. But how do you know that it is? You know that it is because it is self-shining. So, Sat and Chit goes together. You follow? It is plus it declares itself, which means it is because of its own self. It doesn't require borrowed light to be. Now, this we cannot say about any other objects of the creation. We will see this. None of the things in this creation, not a single object. For not a single thing in this creation, we can say that it is self-shining, it is because of its own, no. Whereas Chitihi, consciousness, which means the self. When we talk about Chitihi, remember we are talking about the self, Atma, the reality of myself. So we are talking about that. Chitihi means consciousness, which means Atma, the self. Okay, so self is like that. Swayam vibhati ata anyani bhasayet sadhanam vina. And because it is simply by its presence, by its mere presence, the rest of the things, beginning from mind to the sense organs, to the objects, which means the entire world, shines after this consciousness. You follow? Chitihi shines and the world shines after it. Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. So the verse says in Kathopanishad, Tameva bhantam, you shine, anubhati sarvam. By and you illumine all the objects of the creation. Tasya bhasa, sarvamidam vibhati. Tasya bhasa, because of its shining, because it shines. Who shines? Consciousness shines on its own. Tasya bhasa, sarvamidam vibhati. The entire creation shines because of the shining of the consciousness. So you follow? So how many things are there? Consciousness, one, which is drashta, and because of this consciousness, the entire creation shines. It shines after. So drashta is consciousness and the rest of the creation, beginning from mind, everything is what drashya. So there are only these two things. Remember, how many things? Two entities. The drashya cannot even be called entity, but still let us say there are only these two things in the creation. What? Drashta and drashya. Who is drashta? Consciousness, Chitihi, remember. And rest of the things falls in the category of drashya. Okay? Now we are going into a rather serious discussion. Now listen well. Looking at the nature of this consciousness, we find that it cannot be samsari. There are only two things, drashta and drashya. Drashta is consciousness and drashya is drashya. Drashya is inert. Drashya shines because of the drashta. Okay, now let us analyze. We are studying the scriptures. We are studying the scriptures for what? Why are we studying the scriptures? Because we want to know. Why do we want to know? Because these scriptures give us the knowledge of liberation. Why do we require liberation? We require liberation. We want to be liberated. We work for moksha. Why? Because we consider ourselves to be bound. So, we consider ourselves to be samsari, who is bound, who feels the sense of limitation, who is unhappy, who is helpless creature. But now the question is, important question is, who is samsari? Who is limited? Looking at this two entity, now let us try to see who is limited. Is the drashta limited or the drishya limited? Is the drashta samsari or the drishya samsari? For whom does the samsara belong? Samsara is there, which means the samsari is there. Samsari means what? Samsari means one who has the sense of limitedness, one who feels bound, one who feels inadequate, one who has a sense of want, one who feels incomplete, one who is not happy with things as they are. This is a samsari. Now, who is this samsari? That is the moot question. Who is the samsari? Is the drashta consciousness samsari or the drishya? What all comes in the category of drishya? Beginning from mind to sense organs to objects. And in objects cover the entire creation. Are this samsari or is the consciousness which is called the drashta samsari? We have to now look into this, because so far the text discussed this much. What is drashta and what is drashya? Okay, but now the question is, okay, it is fine to know about consciousness and it is fine to know that the rest of the things are drashya, but where does my problem fit into this? Because I am samsari. So now we have to look into this. Now the question that arises is that who is this samsari? Is consciousness samsari or is drishya samsari? Now let us look at consciousness and try to find out whether it can be samsari or not. So, looking at the consciousness, let us now see whether the sense of limitedness belongs there or not, whether sense of incompleteness is possible in consciousness or not. Now see, the text revealed the nature of the consciousness in verse 5. What? It showed that it is not born, it doesn't die, it doesn't change, it doesn't grow, it doesn't decline, it is not destroyed ever, it ever is, as it is, and it shines on its own, not dependent, it is not dependent, it is complete by itself. Can there be samsara to this? Can limitedness belong to this consciousness or this drashta? Because it is said, chitihi drugeva natu drishyate. It is always drashta only. It is never seen. So, samsara, or keep this in mind, make a note of all this. All this is very, very important. Okay. So, consciousness, samsara cannot belong to consciousness. Samsara means sense of limitedness, sense of want, the sense that everything is not fine. I need to bring about a change. I have to acquire, I have to achieve, I have to do something to feel happy, because I am not happy as I am. This is samsara. Having wife and children and husband and a career doesn't mean samsara. Samsara means a problem here. What is that problem? Sense of limitedness, that I am bound. I am not happy. Okay, I may be happy once in a while, but that happiness soon wanes. My mood changes. What happens outside controls my mood. World has the remote control to my mood. If they press one button, I am happy. If they press other one, I am unhappy. If they press third one, I am angry. If they press fourth one, I am jealous. If they press fifth one, then what? Then what? What shall I say? I start crying. So something or the other pushes my buttons. Because there are buttons, this is samsara. You understand what I am trying to say? Now looking at consciousness, we come to know, we derive that sense of limitation cannot enter here. It is in no way possible that chitihi or consciousness can feel limited. Why? Because it is full, it is not confined by time, it is self-illuming, not dependent at all. So samsara cannot be there. Make a note of it. Now we come to drishya. What is this drishya? Beginning from mind to sense organs to objects, and the entire creation falls in the category of drishya. It falls in the category of drishya. Now let us see, inquire. Inquiry is going on. Can samsara belong there? Can samsara, can sense of limitation be felt by all this which we just described? We just listed mind, sense organs and objects and the world. Can they feel limited? Now, who can feel limited? Limitation can be felt by one who is sentient. Chetana can feel limited. But do you remember the rule which we had given? Whatever falls in the category of drishya is inert. We had already told you, yad drishyam tad jadam. Whatever is categorized or classified as drishya, drishya means object of knowledge, is always jadam. Jadam means inert. Inert means it doesn't stand on its own. It requires light of something else to illumine itself. Okay? So, remember, I just said that samsara or sense of limitation can be felt by one who is chetana. Inert cannot feel. This pen cannot feel that I am incomplete. This one will not feel inadequate, that somebody did not respect me. I am unhappy, I am jealous, I am angry, nobody loves me. All this cannot be felt by this pen or table or chair. No, they do not feel. Why? Because they are not sentient. They are not chetana. You know, that is why they cannot feel that. Now, the entire things which fall in the category of drishya, beginning from mind to sense organs to the objects to the entire creation, all of this is categorized as drishya. And drishya means it is dependent. It doesn't shine on its own, which means that it is inert. It is jadam. So the rule is whatever is drishya is jadam, which because it is dependent, because it doesn't stand on its own legs, because it requires for the light of consciousness to stand. It is dependent. Who? the entire Drishya is dependent. Just as moon requires the light of the sun. Moon is Jadam on its own. In this example, this is just an example. Moon doesn't have its own light. It illumines objects at night on the borrowed light of the sun. Now, everything from mind is inert. Now you will ask me, so first of all of this is inert. So what is inert? Cannot feel. So the sense of limitation cannot be felt by mind also, by sense organs also, by objects also, and by the rest of the things in the creation. Why? Because all of them are inert. So samsara cannot be there. Samsara cannot be in consciousness. And we just mentioned that there are only these two things, drashta and drishya. Drashta is consciousness, drishya is rest of the things from mind. Mind means intellect also, we have to take. So everything beginning from this mind to sense organs to the body and objects, everything is drishya. It cannot feel, it is jadam. So samsara, sense of limitation, cannot come here. Plus it cannot come in drishta because it is conscious, it is independent, it is self-illumining, it is self-shining, not time-bound. So samsara is not there also. Then where is samsara? For whom is this samsara? Do you understand? Who can we call a limited being? The important question is, who is feeling limited? Consciousness cannot feel limited. Rest of the things are jadam, inert. They cannot feel limited. Then who feels limited? Who works for moksha? Who does dharma, artha? Who does all that? A limited being. Who is that limited being? There are only these two things. Where is this third entity who feels limited? So now the question is, for whom is samsara? For whom is this sense of feeling limited? So now, and we cannot deny that we feel limited. We do feel limited. Who is this entity who feels limited? Does it fall in consciousness or does it fall in the class of inert things? Where does this one fall? In which category this entity is? Okay. So now this question which has arose will be answered by verse number 6. Because it is all very well to say that samsara cannot be, sense of limitation cannot be for consciousness. Sense of limitation cannot be for mind and sense organs and objects and the rest of the creation. But still, I feel limited. Who is this I? In which class does it fall? This I. If I knew I was consciousness, I would not feel limited. If I knew I am beyond birth, etc., I would not feel limited. But today, I don't know that. So I am this samsari. But do I fall in the category of drashta or do I come in the category of drishya? So for whom is this samsara? This is a very, very important thing. And we cannot deny that there is samsara. Otherwise the scriptures would not have been there. Otherwise this moksha shastra would not have been there. We would not have the craving to feel limited, to be free. That means samsara is there. For whom is this samsara? There is an entity. There is this entity, third entity, who feels limited. Where does it fall? Does it fall in the category of drashta or drashya? This we have to settle. This we have to understand. So, let me tell you first what? That even the mind is inert. You will question that mind appears to be conscious, mind behaves like conscious. It behaves as if it is conscious. Yes, but we have already told you what? That mind is also seen by consciousness. Whatever is seen by some other one means that mind shines because of that. So because of consciousness, mind shines. Mind doesn't shine on its own. It shines because of this chitti. So now because of the chitti, mind shines. Now because of the mind, even though inert, shines because of consciousness. Okay, mind is also inert but shines on the borrowed light of the consciousness. Okay, then because of the borrowed light of the consciousness, mind is shining. Then this shining of the mind, because the mind is shining, where does this illumination go? It goes to the sense organs. So sense organs also, eyes, ears, etc., themselves are inert, but they behave as conscious because of the mind, because they are seen by the mind. Sense organs are seen by the mind. Mind received its consciousness from chitti. From the chitti, the light came to the mind. So mind became, even though inert, became shining. Then from this, the consciousness passed on to the sense organs. Sense organs, even though inert, shines because of the mind. Now sense organs are shining, and because of that shining, because of that light which they receive from sense organs, because they receive from the mind, they in turn illumine the objects. So you follow? From the consciousness, the light goes to the mind, from the mind to the eyes, from the eyes to the objects, which means because my eyes shine, they in turn illumine the objects. But from here the chain starts. So the mind, even though inert, shines. So now we have to understand whether this sense of I, this I who feels limited, does it fall in the class of this objects or drashya beginning from mind, or does it fall in the class of consciousness? This we have to sign, and this we have to understand, and at the same time we have to understand who is samsari, who is this entity who feels limited. Let me tell you in the beginning that it is chit jada granthi. There is this consciousness and there is this jada. Combination of these two is this samsari. How this happens? The one whom we call individual looks upon himself as ahankara. Individual means ahankara, ego. One who looks upon himself as this small I, ego, individual. Samsara is for him. Sense of limitation is for him. But it is inert. Everything from mind is inert. Then how did it feel in the first place? How did mind become conscious? So now to answer this is verse number 6. So let us read verse number 6. So verse number 6 gives an answer to this very important question as to who is the one who feels limited. Consciousness cannot feel limited. Rest of the things are drashya, they also cannot feel limited. So samsara cannot have any its place. Sense of limitation cannot be, but yet it is there. Nahi drishtehe anupapannam nama. Just by analyzing, you come to the conclusion that there cannot be samsara, because the samsara is not there for consciousness, nor it can be for the mind, etc. So there is no samsara. Oh, just by this kind of analysis, you cannot deny what I feel. What I feel, I am helpless, I am unhappy. What about that? Yes. Who are you? Let us now find. Are you drashta or drishya? If you are drishya, then how did you how did you feel conscious? Because you feel conscious, because of that consciousness, because you feel that you are conscious, chetana, therefore you can feel, and you are feeling this sense of limitation. But how did you become conscious in the first place? So that is being answered by verse number 6. See, this much introduction or background is needed to be able to understand verse number 6. Okay, so let us now read 6th verse. Chichaya veshato buddho bhanam distu dvida sthita ekaham krutiranyasyat antahkarana rupini. See, now the text, the author replies very well, gives us, shows us how this body, beginning from intellect, how did it become conscious, even though on its own it is inert. So let us see this. It says, Chit chaya veshatah buddho bhanam. Buddhi means mind. Let us now look upon buddhi as mind. Why? Because in the earlier verse the word mind is required. Manaha was used. So here we have to understand that buddhi means mind. Okay, then I will show you the difference. But let us first look upon buddhi as mind. Chit chaya aveshatah buddho bhanam. It means, let me translate the verse for you. The mind or the buddhi appears to possess light, appears to be conscious. So how? So says, Chit chaya aveshatah. Chit chaya aveshatah. Chit means consciousness, chaya means reflection, and aveshatah means entry. Aveshatah means entry. So what does it mean? Mind or the buddhi, which is inert, appears as conscious because of what? Chit chaya aveshatah. Because of the entry or infusion of the light of consciousness. Because of the light or luminosity of consciousness and its entry, because of the entry of chit chaya. Chaya means reflection. So the shadow of reflection, shadow of consciousness, because of the entry of chit chaya, because of the entry of the light of consciousness, the mind, which is inert by nature, appears to be conscious, appears to behave as conscious. This is the translation of the first part. Which part? Chit chaya veshatah buddho bhanam. Buddho bhanam. Bhanam means light. Mind appears to be conscious. There is light in the mind because of chit chaya aveshatah, because of the entry or infusion of the light of consciousness. Chaya, shadow of consciousness. Then, what is this mind? It is divided into two. Means it is, this mind is looked upon as having two parts. Which part? These two, dvidha sthita. It is this the means mind or intellect is twofold. The tu dvida sthita. It is twofold. Twofold means it has two parts. Which two parts? It is divided into two parts. Who? This intellect or the mind. In short, antakarana. The here means antakarana. It is divided into two. Twofold. What? Which are these two? One is, next line says, Eka ahankritihi. One is Eka. See, in the second line of this verse, Eka ahankritihi. One is, intellect is divided into two, antakarana is divided, means it is twofold. Which are these two? One is Eka ahankritihi. One is this sense of I. One is this ahankruti means ahankara. One is that in which there is this I thought of I, thought of ego. So this I thought is one, and the other one is see, antahkarana anya syat antahkarana rupini. Which is this another one? Anya means another. Which is that? Anya syat antahkarana rupini. Other one is this mind or the rest of the things. Antahkarana rupini means mind. So this buddhi is divided into two. One is I thought and the other one is you thought. So in short, what it means, that which we call I thought is also mind. Anyway, we are not getting into that now, but what we have to understand is that the same inner organ is divided into two. Antakarana is divided into two. One is I thought, eka ahankritihi, and anya syad antakarana rupini, and other one is this intellect. Other one is this mind. So one is I thought, in short, one is I thought and other one is you thought. One is ego and other one is its instrument. So once again, let me now recap. Chit chaya veshatah buddhau bhanam. The buddhi, that means this antakarana, appears to be conscious. Why? In itself inert, yet appears to be conscious. Why? Chit chaya aveshatah, because of the entry or the infusion of the reflection of consciousness, chit chaya. Okay. Then this antakarana now is already conscious because of the entry of the reflection of the consciousness. Because of the entry of the reflection, this antakarana has become sentient. Now this antakarana has two parts. Which are these two parts? One is I thought and the other one is you thought. In the same antakarana, one thing becomes I, other thing becomes you. One plays the role of I, other one plays the role of you. Sometimes we say, let me tell my mind, you get up now. Let me tell my mind to be quiet. Let me tell my sense organs to be quiet. Let me tell my sense organs not to go out. Who is telling whom? One part says to the other part. You follow? In the same manner, the antakarana is divided into these two, I and you. Okay. Now, this one, the mind, which appears as sentient, yes, is because of the chit chaya. See, that is how this mind and the entire complex, beginning from body to sense organs to prana to intellect, all of them are inert, but yet they appear conscious. Why? Because of the light of the consciousness. And now they have become conscious. They have become sentient. They were inert. But because of the shadow of the consciousness entering here, they appear as conscious. And now the mind and this entire complex, which was inert, has become conscious. And there is this I sense here. So what we call individual, what we call I, what we call ahankara. Who is this ahankara? Ahankara is really inert, but it has become conscious because of what? Because of the light of the consciousness. So, my question was that for whom does the samsara, where does samsara belong? Who is samsari? Is consciousness samsari? No. Is the body samsari? Mind etc. samsari? No. They are inert. They are not samsari. Consciousness is not samsari. Who is samsari? The product of these two. Follow? The combination of these two. Consciousness, no samsara. Body, mind, intellect, inert, no samsara. Because this is conscious, no samsara there is possible. Because this is inert, body, mind, etc., no samsara is possible here. But the combination of these two, what? Chit and Jada, when they came together means in the form of this receiving the light. This means this Jadam receiving the light of consciousness, it became sentient. And there is this I sense. So, the combination of these two is ego, is this ahankara. And here there is sense of limitation. So, samsara is for this one. Who? Samsara is for this fellow who became sentient because of consciousness. So, when this so now let me tell you, see, this is just a model or a way of understanding how come I feel limited. I will give you another example. See, there is this sun in the sky. It is shining on its own. Then there is this bucket filled with water. Bucket is there filled with water and it is kept outside. So now, keep this in mind. This is just an example. But it will help us understand that how this bucket and the water inside, even though not shining on its own, shines, begins to shine. Not only do they begin to shine, but they shine other things. How? Let us see. So, first of all, try to understand, visualize that there is sun in the sky, bright, full of light, and there is this bucket on the ground here, and this bucket is filled with water. Okay, so now the water is there and the shadow, the reflection of the sun enters this bucket. This is the bucket and there is water inside. So the reflection of the sun enters. Moment the reflection of the sun enters, I use the word, but does it enter? No, it is there in the sky. Sun doesn't enter, but its light enters. Because of the reflection of the sun entering in this water or the reflection falling in this bucket full of water, what happens? The water begins to shine because it is the nature of the surface of the water that it reflects the light. It reflects light. If there was plain bucket with no water, the bucket is dense. It cannot reflect sun. But there is water inside, and that water can reflect the light of the sun. So, because it can reflect the light of the sun is reflected here in the water. Now what happens? Now this water also begins to shine because of the reflected light of the sun. Now this bucket of water with the reflection of the sun is put into a dark room, and it is receiving the light of the sun. Reflection of sun is entering here. It has this reflection. So what does it do? It provides light to other objects in the room. Could the water and the bucket on its own, could they have lighted up other objects in the room? No. But they can light up objects of the objects in the room is precisely because it itself is receiving the reflected light of the sun. So first it receives the reflected light from the sun. So the reflection of sun is falling here. So it is illumined. It shines, and then it illumines other things. This is an example. Now try to extend this example to ourselves. Try to understand. The body is there in the place of the bucket. See the similarity. The body is in the place of the bucket, and the bucket has water. What is in place of the water here? The mind. The mind and sense organs and pranas are in the place of the water. But mind is the main thing. Antahkarana is the main thing. So bucket is in the place of the gross body, sthula sharira, and water filled in the bucket is in the place of what? Antahkarana here. Now just as the water received the light of the sun, it received the reflection of the sun got reflected in water similarly. Here what is getting reflected in this mind? What is getting reflected? The light of consciousness. Just as light of the sun got reflected in water which was filled in the bucket, similarly here light of the consciousness is getting reflected into the mind. And therefore, even though the mind itself is inert, becomes conscious, becomes sentient because of the borrowed light of the conscious. It becomes sentient, and then that sentiency passes on to the prana, passes on to the sense organs, and then it passes on to the objects. This is how, even though the entire complex, beginning from gross body to the subtle body, which means mind, etc., even though they are inert on their own, they appear or behave as conscious is thanks to the light of the consciousness. Okay. So this is just a way of explanation. This explains how this inert body, even though inert, looks sentient, and once it is sentient, then I feel that I am limited. Now who feels that I am limited? That we will discuss next time. So please keep this in mind. Next time, please once again listen to what is gone by and then come back so that you are more familiar with what will come. Okay, thank you. Om Purnamadah Purnamitam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanta Shanta Shantihi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.